and welcome to We Women Want. This is our weekly show where we explore issues that are pertinent to women, issues such as body shaming, acid attack victims, laws that can help women, laws that are against women. We also raise issues regarding say, cancer, any kind of issues, fashion designing. I mean, we've all kinds of topics are discussed over here. We celebrate the wins and we try and find solutions for those who need it. So this is also a show which is actually working out to be a sort of a support group, a sort of an empathy group where people can come and actually just come and chat and just come and listen. That's at least what we're trying to achieve with this show. Today, we're going to be taking a look at women in the workplace. Joining me on the show today is Alkanshree Dahar. She's a managing partner at the Law Offices of India. We have Latika Tandon. She's an executive coach, leadership advisor and a strategy consultant. And Anuradha Mathur. She's a founder and dean at the Vedica Scholars Program for Women. And we're also very fortunate to have some of these scholars here. Some of them have joined the workforce. Some of them are going to join the workforce. So we're going to, after a short while, we're going to take their questions and hear their views. But first, Anuradha, first of all, congratulations on putting together this school. I've been talking to these girls and incredible, it's good to have such intelligent women in the workforce, But before we really go on to Vedica, a bit about how do you see, is there a problem? Because, I've been looking at data and statistics. They're saying the number of women in higher education is more than the number who actually join the workforce and actually stay in the workforce. It's either because they have to drop out because they're a caregiver or they have other commitments, or they don't feel comfortable in the workforce. So, what is the situation in your view?
I think it's a very complex, big, deep-rooted issue. So I don't think there's one solution or one reason for why we are where we are. But first, thanks for the opportunity, and it's really good to be here. I think the reason why we sort of set up Vedica and it is where it is really is a response to what we saw as a problem. And I think, Priya, I see it at 4 levels, especially with respect to the workforce. There is a problem of access in the first place. Then there is access to retention. Then there is access, limited access to opportunity, and therefore limited access to growth. So when I say in the first space, there is a problem of access, if you look at the numbers that are getting into, let's say, the top tier MBA schools, there's a problem right there. The numbers are smaller. You look at engineering, you look at whatever you do. If once they graduate, the large part of higher education is looking for more women as students, but they're doing nothing to their curriculum to reflect what you need to do to take years, respond to years of conditioning, so that they can then cope with what the workplace delivers to them. Right? So there's that piece, that the curriculum is not adapting. And therefore, you don't really know what to do when you reach crossroads. The first response to problems in the workplace is to quit. Nobody told you how to navigate it. Nobody told you what to expect. You graduate from a top school thinking you'll have the same world, but you don't. The world for women and men is different today. So there's there's a retention problem there. And when the pipeline becomes narrower at middle or bottom end of senior management, then of course there's a limited access to leadership. So I think we have to solve at each level. This is our little attempt to make sure that access becomes better. You are preparing girls better to stay in the workforce. If they stay in the, we say #don't quit all the time.
Right.
Don't quit. There is a way to work around it. And I'll, hopefully get a chance later to talk about why they quit, why they feel it's less important to stay in the workforce forever. Men don't quit.
Yeah.
Because they are brought up to believe that they have to look after themselves and the world. So we give ourselves the option to quit as well. So I think it's at every level. And so I think it's systemic, it's organizational, and it is at an individual level. And I think we have to chip away at all of these collectively all the time to make sure that there are many more women in the workplace. They first join, then they stay, they grow, and they lead.
Good points. In fact, which is what shows like this are for, to create an awareness. And I'm going to take that point, the #don't quit. The idea is really that, what are the solutions, Latika, in your point of view, that, we can make, so that they don't quit? How do you make the conditions better? Should we just have workspaces only for women? Would that be one solution?
So, yeah, first off, thanks, Priya, for having us here
Good to have you.
and have this show on. I think it's an important effort and initiative to actually create that energy and space for women to hear of ideas and thoughts. So, and then pretty much on similar lines is what Anuradha just said. I think the problem is at the social level, at the family level, personal level, and obviously the organizational level. And we need to, like she said, chip away at all these challenges. Quitting is unfortunately one of the first, it's the most normal, response which a woman goes through when there is anything which goes beyond, when she gets married, when she has a baby, or any kind of a responsibility other than hers is kind of
foisted on her.
And she takes it most happily, of course. But that's the very natural response that comes. And I think the solution lies then at all these levels, right? We need to have, to actually start teaching. We talk about DEI, right? We talk about that the fact that there has to be equality, there has to be inclusion, and there has to be diversity. I think that has to be taught right at the school level. I mean, we are not teaching our children to respect boys, to respect women. I think it needs to start there. I think as mothers of boys, we need to start teaching our sons how it's an equal world for everybody and space needs to be created. I think it needs to happen obviously at a more social level, which is what efforts like this should and Vedica are creating. And at organizational level, I think there's definitely a significant amount of responsibility that lies at their doors. So they have to create, I think, first off, acknowledging. So Priya, many researchers will tell you that men are not even aware. So if you do a kind of a research between men and women, so the men will say it's all hunky-dory, there's no problem, there are no biases, it's a very equal, egalitarian kind of organization.
But
you ask the women and you'll get this bag of challenges which they will. So the men are not even cognizant. So I think at the first level, you need to recognize the fact that there is a challenge, and the men you need the men, you're not going to shoo them out, right? It's a society of both men and women. So it's important to get them as your allies, to get them on your side, right? Because they're there predominantly today as things stand in the world out there. So I think organizations need to make their men recognize the fact that there is a bias. A lot of these are not even recognized, not even aware of these biases. So create that awareness. And then I think you need to create systemic support systems for women.
Okay.
So whether you create a daycare, a childcare system, give them more flexibility. I think acknowledge organizations and teams which are creating that space. So stand up and cheer initiatives which are taking care of women, right? And I think the support system is, like she talked about, the leadership pipeline, right? There is the leadership pipeline of women is just not there. So I think that pipeline and hashtag don't quit is so critical, because I think that's the first thing we women do. And that's where it's, we have actually, if you see, I was sharing, my daughter's a lawyer. When she started out, I think the class had more men than women, more women than men. And as you go up the pyramid, it starts filtering away drastically. In fact, that's a question I usually ask my daughter, is that, how come you don't brief all your councils and senior councils are men? And how come you don't brief senior councils who are women? And she says, Mom, that's a lacuna. That's a gap. That's a huge abyss there. So I think a lot of initiatives
need to be taken.
Yes.
But Alka, you also, I don't know whether, what is it like for women as lawyers? There is a lacuna. We also had a show with some other women lawyers who were saying that there is, not enough women judges. But the point that I want to ask you is also the biases. You must be having a lot of cases that come to you. What are the prejudices and biases that women face at workplaces that come your way?
Okay, I have to be honest. And I'm going to be brutally honest about this.
Please do.
See, I have been in practice now for 25 years and a little more than that. But I have to say, initially when I started off, and we would get these very big mega cases, and I would walk into a conference room, and this was when I was young. I was just a few years in the practice. I could actually see a ripple of apprehension, concern passing through my clients. Like a girl at her age managing our multi-dollar business, I could see that. So there is no denying the fact that there is that vibe in the air. Of course, due to so many factors, socio-cultural, patriarchal society, it's a very complex question, like we all agree on. And that's going to take time. But since with my background as a lawyer, like another one thing which is totally imperative is that I think it is very essential, like both of you said. See, unless we don't know what the laws are, how do we enforce them? In fact, among the ruler, I'm not talking about the metropolitan cities like Bombay and Delhi. Over here, women are much more exposed to much more knowledge and information about their rights. But if you go to the rural society, there's an alarmingly lack of awareness about their rights. If I don't know what my right is, how am I going to enforce it? How am I going to ask for it? So first thing that I think I think there should be a huge nationwide debate on this, is that even at the school level, they must be taught the rights and the remedies available to us in law. If you don't know what it is, you can't ask for it, as simple as that. Then coming to, but we also, like, for example, parity in the
parity.
pay.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Good question.
So it's not only in India, it's in the UK, in the US. Like, I think Iceland was the first country which said equal pay for all the sexes. And Nordic, the Scandinavian countries, they are the ones which has the least amount of parity. Why? See, first we have to see that why it happens. Of course, India, again, diverse variables are there. So, the disparity, it's not as simple as that we bring in the law and everything gets sorted out. But we do have the provisions. Under the Constitution, we are ensured that there is equal pay parity between women and men. But again, there's so many surveys which have been done, World Economic Forum. In fact, India was, I think, 135 among 146 countries. So you can imagine, again, lack of awareness, patriarchal, socio-cultural, economic, cultural differences. And also, not only that, in GGG, which is the global gender gap also, it is the lowest, among the lowest. But people must know, not only the women must know that under the Constitution, like we have Article 14, equality, equal protection before law, or equality before law. So that means a man and a woman having the same job have to be paid the same amount of money. Then we have specific articles, Article 15, that there can be no discrimination on basis of your sex. That is there. Then Article 16 of the Constitution, saying that in all matters of employment, the man and the women have to be paid exactly the same. Having said that, and then we have I'm just telling you all this, that we must know what we have to use.
Right.
What we have to use, and that we must use them. Then we have the Directive Principles 39D, which again says that you can't discriminate. And in the country, each state shall ensure that the policies give equal pay to the genders irrespective of their sex. Having said that, and then of course we must also know that India is a signatory to Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW.
That's all on paper.
That's all on paper.
How does it work on ground?
I'm telling you. So, but that's a very good question that you asked. Recently, just recently, the Supreme Court has said that equality, equal pay for equal work, is not a constitutional right, but it's a goal. It's a constitutional goal towards which the government will work towards. So having said that, but it's a very good take. You couldn't have it otherwise, because you see, there are no straight jackets for equal pay for equal work. How do you equate that?
It's a very subjective interpretation.
Exactly. For that, there can be so many criteria which are involved: eligibility, the criterion. The scope of work can be the same, but the scope of responsibilities could be different. Experience, sense of responsibility. So how do you then equate it? But that is why then we have the courts. See, whenever, not only a woman, if a man thinks that he has the same...
Does that happen?
Not really. I haven't seen that. But I'm saying, but in law.
Okay,
in law, it's just not the woman which gets it, but even a man.
Correct.
Both are equal. And women, of course, because of the way it is in practicality, like you said, women tend to be, because of so many issues, family planning, there's children, so it's not a continuous haul, they get interrupted.
Okay.
In fact, interestingly, there was this case which I came across of Air India. This was a long back. Nargish Malik, I think, in which 6 air hostesses had gone to the court saying that, and there was an Air India, there was an airlines regulation which basically said that if you get pregnant, that your job would be terminated. So 6 of them went to the court. And of course, the court said it's violative of 14, 15, 16, and, and they struck down to that regulation. But the court held, but this was many years back, but the court held that 2 pregnancies are okay, but if you have 2 children and you get pregnant the 3rd time, then you would retire from work.
Wow.
Wow. I mean, that's a big wow. And interestingly, in this recent judgment of Navjot Johar, Justice Chandrachud, who's the CGI now, he said, and he said, and he gave a concern about it, saying that why should the family planning and all, why should only the woman have to, think about it? Why not a guy? So it progresses. The regulations, the courts sit on it, a case comes up, and the Supreme Court, High Court, whatever it might be, then they give their interpretation of the law in conformity with what's happening with the times, because the times change, the value system changes.
Yeah.
So then they give their judgment, which basically then amounts to law. So we do have the courts. If a woman or a man, I must emphasize on that, thinks that he's not getting equal pay, he has the right to go to the court, and the court, thinking, on basis of the facts and the circumstances, will then pass a judgment.
Okay. So we've got the legal viewpoint, but we also, know what really happens on ground. I'm going to take a break and come back and open this up to the two questions from our audience. But the biggest takeaway from all our panelists is that awareness, that's a big, strong this thing in the step forward towards creating an equality. Know your rules, know your rights, and know that just don't give up, don't quit. There is somebody there. Know your support groups also. That's what I'm going to ask, in fact, Anuradha about, but after a short break. Hello and welcome back to We Women Want. Today we're taking a look at women in the workplace. And before I open up for questions in the audience, Anuradha, support groups are very essential, I would say. How does that work out on ground?
Yeah, I think support groups are important, and I think, Priya, they are most important to not feel isolated. To not feel the victim, to not feel isolated, to know that the problem you face or how you feel is actually common to many others. And that can come in many ways. I'm a big supporter of the fact that sometime in our lifetime for women, it's great to go through some sort of an all-women's exposure, because it allows you to think about yourself, dream, have ambition in an ungendered manner. And, I want to just go back for 1 second to what we were speaking about earlier. There's a lot of this stuff about women and whatever. I think the way the world is structured right now is the world of work, I think, is as devastating for men. And I'll tell you why. Because they carry the responsibility for 1 + 3 or 4 or 6 through their lives. They don't have the option to not quit. So, and I feel like the sooner all of us recognize, men and women, that a more equal world is going to be better for both. Women will have more work to do and men will have more parenting to do. There's so many men I know today who would like to be a primary parent, don't want to live with regrets about not having been there when their parents were unwell, whatever. But if we don't take some part, if we don't grab some part of that share, they will also not be able to grab some part of our share. So, and all comparisons, Priya, are at the extreme. Women are this, men are that. Gender research will tell you that 85 to 90% of the qualities and attributes that men and women have are the same. So we have to come closer into the center and operate from there. And I think it's going to be a better world for everybody.
To find a common ground.
So I think for that, there is a lot of support. I mean, I've seen this, that I think there's somebody, we talk a lot about sisterhood. There's now so much conversation about women friendships. So I think the sooner young women realize the importance of those kinds of support groups. I'll give you just one quick example. We expose during our program young women to at least 150 guest lectures through the year that they're with us. Of that, I would think 100 are women. Now, the women that come and talk to them, they can be single, they can be married, they can be loud, they can be quiet, they can be traditional, they can be modern, they can have kids, they needn't have kids, they can be aggressive, they can be moderated. The truth is that all of them are successful. And it gives young women an opportunity to see the world that exists
Yeah.
and who they can be
Hmm.
without having to be in somebody else's race, against somebody, copying somebody
But
else.
I think, one reason for this is also earlier, there were very much less women. So, there was this whole thing that women were not supporting other women. Now, because the number of women are more.
Yeah,
so-
no, but I really
Yeah,
want to
what?
respond to that.
Okay.
Swings both ways.
I really want to
Okay.
respond to that. And we did this big study because, Priya, one of the worst things that happens, and it's an argument against more women in leadership, because they say, yeah, but women don't help other women. And the rest of us sitting around don't get up and object. So and I think it's one of the things that we do, we talk about solutions. One solution is, please stand up against a stereotype. Please stop conversations that don't ring true for you. So whenever I'm at a panel and people say, women don't help other women, I say, listen, I have been a recipient, and I would really like to believe that many other women have been a recipient from me of support,
Okay.
of, help, whatever. So these myths perpetuate. And
So,
there was a
breaking
time-
stereotypes.
yeah, there was a time when women were like that. Today, our research, our survey shows that that's not true for young women.
Okay. You want to come in quickly before?
Yeah. So very quickly, I mentor and I coach a lot of women, and it's very heartening to know that I think the shift is very clear. So today, the strength of numbers is being recognized. So women today are cheering for other women, and I think going forward need to cheer louder for women, right? And that's the way those support groups will come in and actually create the genuine support that is required.
I think, yes, you are right, but now it's changing. Now, I do see there are a lot of women who are rooting because they see themselves in them, you see. So if you are down, you're going to put somebody else down, So it's a collective, universal energy. So it has to go up. And I think women are intelligent and smart enough to recognize that now. You see, initially the exposure wasn't that, but now it's different. So it's a different world, it's a changing world, and it's changing well in my experience.
It's a
Thank
brave new
God
word.
for it.
Good. But any questions you have, I think some of you are already working. Maybe you would like to share your experience. Okay, you have a question first. Yes.
So, stemming from Anuradha's point where she very clearly stated, right, that the burden is on both men and women. And I feel the onus is also on both men and women, because now I'm working with Vedica, which is an all-women workspace, mostly women. And prior to that, I was working at a very gender equal workspace with men and women both working together. So there is a clear disparity. Like, say, if I'm working under a male boss and if I'm performing well, I'm getting increments and bonuses and appraisals. So by my peers, it's, normally taken as, okay, yeah, because she's maybe good looking and she's getting that favor, that's the reason she got that. So any positive feedback for a woman to be normally embraced, it never happens. The
Good point.
society or even your colleagues, they are always going to define it as, oh, she's strong. Maybe, she's suffered a lot. She's been through a lot. No, a woman can also be strong just because she is strong.
Right.
Versus
point.
when it's an all-women platform, therefore, or to work under a women boss or a female boss, then I feel there's a lot of insecurity which somewhere stems. And because for my boss or for any XYZ, maybe she has been through a lot to reach to that position wherever she is.
So there's more
So she
empathy.
always feels that, that, oh my God, I went through so much to get this. So how can I let another girl or a young girl to just walk through it like a piece
All
of
right.
cake,
Okay.
right? So I guess
So-
that is something which we need to, generally address, that if it's equal for men and women, so if women is doing something special, let's also take it with all equality, not like she's, just grabbed an award or a medal. It's a normal thing. She
Okay.
is having those
Got your
talents
point.
and she should
Let's
get that.
share it
point.
with the others also.
Yeah.
Would any-
Can I interject?
Yeah,
I have
sure.
a very interesting case on this, exactly on what you're talking about. And it's not only in India. There was a very famous case of a BBC anchor, Samira Ahmed, in which what you're talking about is, just to cut a long story short, the gist was that this male colleague of hers was getting 7 times more pay and than the female one. Then she went to the employment tribunal. And the argument which was given forth by BBC was that the male, I wouldn't take the name, but he had a glint in his eyes and he had this cheekiness while he was presenting the program. Now, I was just thinking, when I came across that, I was thinking, if a woman had said that, a glint in her eyes and cheekiness, my God, that would have straight been such a sexist one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how can you say he's getting paid because there was a glint in his eyes and he had this cheekiness while presenting? This is exactly what you're talking about. So there are inherent sexist, perceptions. And that's just a part of the deal. But I mean, I could go, but of course, we do have, recourse to law and all that. If a woman or a guy feels that he deserves more pay, then we have the law which supports us absolutely, directly.
Okay.
And substantially.
Good. I think you would want to say something about being in an all-woman workplace.
So I'll be entering into the workspace. So hence the question. So I always wonder, because in the organization, the transparency is not there. Who is being paid, how much. And then to bring up that thing also becomes a problem in the first place only. So I was just wondering how to get access to this.
See, if it's a government organization, so there's this RTI and all that. So, you can find out what the pay is. But if it's a private sector, I don't know if it's private or it's government, but if it's a private sector, in fact, most of the contracts have a confidentiality clause saying that you cannot discuss your pay with the other person. You see? Now, if you have signed on those dotted lines, then there's not much you can do about it. But a caveat to that would be, but if after a while you think that, your other colleagues, your male colleagues are getting more and you're not getting less, and of course, I mean, you do have a recourse to go to the court to agitate your claim.
I think we have time for one more interjection. And anybody would like to come in? Would you like to come in? Yeah.
Since we are talking about women at workplace, recently a PIL has been filed for period leaves, right? And it has been a topic which has been talked about quite a lot in the recent time. Do you think asking for this and bringing it into the law, Alka, will actually take women participation at the back, or will it be actually taking it forward with awareness at tier 2, tier 3 cities, other than metropolitan cities as well?
I think it's a good development. I think it is because you see, across the board, we don't know, but there are certain women who do suffer a lot. So they do suffer a lot because of this. So I think it makes sense. But what the guidelines would be put down would be subjective from each organization to another one. Yes, in my opinion, I think it works.
I really want to come in on that because I feel like it's a period is something that happens to every woman. And if there are X number of women who have a tougher time, then that's the exception. It's not the rule. And I think the moment it becomes something like an entitlement, I'll give you a very quick, 30-second example. In Vedica, in year 2, every day I would get emails from young women saying, I have my period, I can't come to class. So one day, the entire Vedica team, me with all my colleagues and one of our male colleagues, we all stood and we said, other than him, we all have a period. We come to work every day. Pop a pill, take a hot water bottle, whatever. Because if you're going to be sick 5 days a month and you feel like you should be entitled to that leave, I think there is a really big backlash you're talking about at a fundamental level.
I concur with you 100%.
So I think I really think.
But my caveat to that would be, it's a biological thing for a woman. It's something like when she's pregnant, it's maternity leaves. So there are certain biological processes, she undergoes that. There are certain women I know who have suffered.
Yeah.
But don't make it a rule, make it an exception.
Yeah.
That's what she's saying.
But there's another extreme. There was this case in which this woman was just a short one in 10 seconds, but that's another extreme of having the periods. They had an accident and I think it was road rage, and the court let them off because they were having their periods, and they said there was this rage of hormones in that.
Wow.
That I think is an extreme. That I think is an extreme.
That's how to get away with murder.
I wish we could carry on. This has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you all for this, but we're totally out of time. Despite being a women's quota, I think we are stuck on the time limit. Thank you for that. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.